are really glad today to present this series of talks conducted by Mr. Jeffrey Say from Salle Institute of Art. This series of talks serves to be a platform for collectors to be more equipped with decisions how to collect a piece of art and where to start from. Very often when you look at a piece of art, you always wonder immediately whether you like or dislike. Or sometimes you get kind of frustrated not knowing how you feel about this piece of art and what the artist is trying to say. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is what is art and what is art for. It's trying to define what is art in this current situation and whether through the ages art has been redefined and how has it a place in art history today. In the next few sessions of our series, we'll be discussing a wide array of topics such as how to look at a work of art, how is the value of an artwork being ascertained, and how to decide what the artist is trying to decide across to his audience. We're also going to talk about sculptures, about materiality and forms, introducing the art and technique of sculpturing as well as how it has evolved over time. And of course, there is a very interesting topic about contemporary art and where it is today, the staff shark and many other interesting topics on our fourth series, where is contemporary art in the current world, explores on different media like performing arts to installations. We hope you will enjoy this series of talk and welcome you back to the gallery and attend our exhibitions, and hope you will enjoy the art talk which can be downloaded in our website as well. Look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, as Chris mentioned, this is the first in a series of 4 talks, right? Which is really meant as an introduction, okay, to art, right? And we will kick off with, of course, a very age-old philosophical question, right, of what is art, okay? And and I'll continue, okay, in the second half of the talk with you know, the purposes and function of art, okay? Once we have in a way resolve the definition of what art is about. Okay. Now, is that okay, the mic? All right, no echo or, all right, okay, thanks. Okay, now if you look around you, okay, I mean, you see paintings and sculptures, okay, and you can confidently say that this is art. I think not least because it's in an art gallery, right? So it must be art, okay? Now, I think for paintings, it's less of a dispute, okay, that it is art. But how about, you know, a piece of sculpture, right? Now, what makes this sculpture art, okay? And, you know, if you were to just go next door to Robinson's, okay, and if you were to come across a figurine as well, made of porcelain, okay, would you regard that as art? Right? Think about it. Okay, you'll probably say, oh, it's a decorative object. Okay, now you probably use the term decorative object and not art. Okay, so what makes the, you know, the so-called decorative object at Robinson's different from what you see here? Okay, because I think the same skill that went into the making of that object also went into the making of this object here. Right? Okay, so I suppose it's a question that is not easily answered, okay, but I think in this next hour or so, okay, we will try to arrive at a kind of agreement. I'm not sure whether we can call it agreement, okay, of what art is about, okay, because I think I have to declare, right, at the start that art is a very complex subject, okay, and that's what makes it interesting, right? Okay, I don't know in your experience, okay, or when you've probably gone with a friend to an exhibition, you know, or to an art gallery, okay, and you found yourself maybe, you know, talking aloud or, you know, or at least thinking to yourself, right? You call that art, okay? Have you all come, you know, have you all used this phrase before? And my 5-year-old kid can do it, okay, or I can do it, all right? Okay, and also frequently, okay, you ask yourself, but is it art? Okay, in 1926, I think or thereabouts, right? A certain American collector, okay, you know, he was returning to America after buying a piece of sculpture by the, I would say the first abstract sculptor, okay, Constantine Brancusi, okay, and was trying to bring it back to the US. And, you know, at that time in the US, artworks were not subjected to custom duties, okay? But when he tried to bring this piece of sculpture in, he was stopped by the customs officials, okay, who was not convinced that this is a piece of art, right? Okay, and eventually, I think after some arguing, okay, the customs official was still not convinced, okay, and he was taxed, and he was taxed under this category of kitchen and hospital supplies, okay, right, because they thought that this was a piece of manufactured metal, right? But of course, Brancusi, you know, and he had his own supporters. He went to court over this, and thankfully for art, he won. Okay, so there was a debate about whether this sculpture actually looks like a bird. Okay, that was one of the points of contention in court. Okay, does it look like a bird to you? Okay, but Brancusi calls it bird in space. Okay, now frequently you'll come across this in Brancusi's work. Okay, because most of his works, if not all, okay, are abstract. Okay, but again, but he makes references to nature. Okay. But if you look carefully, okay, the streamlined form of the sculpture, as well as the verticality of it, okay, all of this is suggestive of flight. Okay, a bird, perhaps about to take off. Okay. How about this? Mark Wallinger, a UK artist, right? Okay, he's an artist that's full of wit, okay? And this is actually an artwork, which he entitled A Real Work of Art, okay? And it is actually a real horse, a racehorse, okay? And it was displayed as a piece of art. Okay? Now, I can see your face, you're not convinced by it, okay? Right? It was probably displayed at a gallery, so we'll come to that later, right? The context of which makes something art, right? But if you look at the title, it's interesting, A Real Work of Art, okay? And the fact that he names it a real work of art, and also advertising its existence, okay, meant that he was trying to challenge the very notion of what art is about, okay? And that's what artists frequently do as well. How about this? My bed. Okay. Right. Is this a piece of art? Okay. Now this work was first bought by Charles Saatchi. Okay. And I think it still remains in his collection. Okay. And it's by Tracy Emin. Tracy Emin is she belongs to the same generation as Damien Hirst, the Chapman brothers. Okay, and all those very controversial but now famous artists. Okay. And it's what you call an installation work, right? And it's actually her own bed, right? She slept on it. She suffered depression on it. Okay, in fact, there was a period of time where she couldn't get up because of depression. Okay, and even the bed sheets are soiled, right? And then below you see some objects strewn around. Okay, you have soiled knickers, condoms. Okay, bottles of booze, cigarettes. Okay, so you have to understand, Tracy Emin's work is often autobiographical. It's about her life. Okay, so the work of art is integrated with her own life, right? So we can have that kind of intimacy with her work because of that. But I know you're still not convinced that it's a piece of art. Okay, never mind. How about this? Samantha Lowe, the girl who was and another companion, right? Okay, I won't say accomplice, who was recently charged was she charged for vandalism or mischief? Some vandalism. Okay, and she had to do community work, right? Okay, and when this first appeared in the press, okay, it divided people into two camps. Of course, on one camp you have all the artists who supported her. Okay, and there was a question as well as to whether what she has done is art. Okay, So if it's art, it cannot be vandalism, correct? Okay, so that's the whole argument, right? But I think later on, of course, now, of course, some people term the work that she does street art. Okay, there's something that's now called street art. Okay, and I think graffiti is also part of street art, right? Yes. So this was a talking point. Okay, and it started people talking about what is art. How about the bowerbird? You all know the habits of bowerbird? It builds bowers. Okay, bowers are like shelters or houses. Okay. Now the question is this: is art only restricted to the human race? Okay. How about the animal kingdom? Right. Okay. So the bowerbird, in order to attract its mate, the male bird, okay, it would take as many colorful objects as possible and builds up the bower. Okay. And the more brightly colorful it is, the more likely it is to attract its mate. Right? So is that art in the animal kingdom? Right? And how about this? Okay, a chimp doing art. Okay. Now I don't know whether you've heard of, elephants. There were celebrated elephant artists, okay, whose works were actually sold at auction. Right? And they were not cheap, they were like 5 figures, okay? People who paid for a painting by an elephant, right? Okay, so is this art? Okay, how do you define art? Okay, as I said, is it only a work done through human agency? Right? So I hope all these slides will make you ponder, okay, as to the nature of art. So what is art? All right, we look at a couple of definitions, both of which are, I would say, quite limiting, okay, in its definition. Okay, and you have the Oxford Dictionary, which says that it is expression of human creative talent. Okay, now notice the word that human, okay, and there must be, of course, some creativity in it, right? And it must come in a kind of a visual form. Right? How about works using text? Right? Can we consider that art as well? Okay, well, we'll come to that maybe later. Okay, and the Britannica gives a more detailed definition of what art is. Okay? Okay, am I blocking your... Huh? All right, okay. Okay. But of course, that list there, painting, sculpture, etc., is of course not exhaustive, okay, because today the categories of art has expanded even more, right? In this talk, I've not shown you other works that might be considered art, okay? A performance artist, what's his name? Okay, anyway, he did a performance where he ate fetuses. Okay, but anyway, that sort of cannibalism in art, is also happening, right? Okay, and there are other such instances where I recall a Danish artist who put goldfishes in a blender, okay, and it was displayed in an art gallery, and audiences were challenged to switch on the button, right? Okay, but anyway. Now, by its original definition, art, okay, it comes from the Latin word, ars, meaning skill or craft. Okay, so interesting again, that skill or craft is seen to be a prerequisite, okay, for art making, right? And also the application of the body of knowledge, most often using a set of skills, okay? Now, how about works? Okay, some of you have probably encountered works which use minimal skill or no skill at all, right? Okay, and right, do those qualify as art then? Okay. Okay, well, I won't go through this, but these are some very nice quotes. Okay, I think you have it in your handout. Okay, I like the last one best, art is. Okay, and then you can fill in the blanks. Okay, art is. Right. In, when was this? 2006? Okay, an artist, David Hensel, he submitted a work for the Royal Academy, the prestigious Royal Academy in the UK, summer exhibition. Okay. Unfortunately, the head got separated from its plinth. His plinth is made of slate, and his rest, the rest you see there is a bone rest, right? It's made of bone. It got separated. Okay. And what happened was that the head was sent back to the artist. Okay. While the plinth and the wooden rest were accepted for the exhibition. Okay, and and that happened at the Royal Academy, all right. And it led, of course, David Hensel to make this remark about, if you look at the last line, about this, a pantomime, the artwork is like a pantomime, right? Okay. Manipulation, right? He talks about manipulation by collectors and, artists, and I mean not artists but museums, auction houses, etc. Okay. And this happened. This is not an urban legend, right? It happened. Okay. Now the visual arts have traditionally consisted of painting and sculpture. Okay. Architecture is sometimes included. Okay. But however, in the late 20th century, 21st century, right, the term visual arts have expanded to include, okay, other so-called categories or genres like photography. Okay. There's still a debate about photography. Okay. Now there's such a thing as fine art photography, right? And then you have also installation, performance art, not to be confused with performing arts. Okay, right? And more art forms are emerging. And of course, video, right? Video. Okay, and defining art raises problems. Okay, because as I mentioned, I think earlier, a real work of art, okay, by Mark Wallinger, okay, and he seemed to exemplify artists who constantly challenge the very nature of art, the very definition of art. Right? Okay, and so you see works that are coming out that do not belong to the mainstream, so to speak. Okay, because artists are constantly coming out with so-called counter examples, right? Okay, that defy the mainstream. And it all started, I think, with this artist. Well, I don't know whether you can call him an artist. Okay, there's still the anti-Duchamp camp, right? Even today. Okay, Marcel Duchamp. Right? Now he belongs to this art movement called Dada, the Dada movement. Okay, and the Dada movement often sought to create works that are irrational. Okay, that defy the rational. And what Duchamp did was that, he would frequently go to a hardware store, and he would buy second-hand goods. Okay, or products like this. This is actually a urinal. Right? Okay. And what he did was that he simply turned it upside down, okay, signed it with a fictitious name, R-Mutt, M-U-T-T, right, and submitted it for an exhibition. And of course, not surprisingly, it was rejected outright. Okay, but that gave him further ammunition to give a kind of a retort, right? And this was the retort that he gave. Okay? Now, whether Mr. Mutt with his own hands made the fountain or not has no importance. Okay, he chose it, right? So he has given a new thought for that object. Okay, in other words, okay, by doing that, okay, he has transformed that so-called urinal into a piece of art. Okay, so for Duchamp, the idea is more important than the actual work, right? So Duchamp is often considered to be the father of what you call conceptual art, okay, where the idea, the concept behind it takes primacy over the actual execution or even the aesthetics of the work, right? So this is an important work. I mean, whether Duchamp meant it as a prank or a joke, which some people still believe he did, okay, we don't know, okay, but it is probably the single most influential work of the 20th century, right? because it has influenced, conceptual art and other art forms, okay, which place a lot of emphasis on the idea. And he has also raised certain crucial questions about the nature of art. Okay, does art have to be beautiful? Okay, does art have to be original? Okay, because Duchamp, he has no qualms about making multiple copies of this. Okay, and he also raises questions about authenticity as well. Okay, so those are very important philosophical questions, right? And it's called fountain, right? Now, in the end, whose definition is it? Okay. Now, definition that seems so-called correct to Western cultures, okay, is likely to differ from, how a person from non-Western culture sees it. Okay. Yeah.
Fresh batteries.
Thanks.
I hope it's not too loud.
Okay. Hello. Is that okay? Yes. Now, whoever painted this in a cave, okay, and that cave is found in France at Lascaux, right? Of course, you can't go into the original one, the cave, right? It's been sealed up. You can see the facsimile, right? Okay, whoever painted this, I mean, these are very realistic depictions of animals, bulls, horses, rhinoceros, okay, painted on cave walls, okay, and the colors are still so fresh and vivid, okay. Now, and this was dated back to about 15 to 13,000, okay, BCE. Okay, nowadays we use before the Common Era also, okay, or you can call it before Christ. Okay. Right. Now, whoever painted this, okay, for whatever reason, we do not know the exact reasons why, okay, they painted these animals on the wall. Okay. Now, did those people consider this to be art at that time? Okay. Okay, but now, this has been commonly accepted as art. Okay, but those people who painted it at that moment in time, right? Did they consider this as art? Okay, I'm not sure. Maybe they did. Okay, maybe they already had a concept of art then. Okay, I'm not sure. How about this? Okay, this is an African fetish. Okay, statue. Right, and this is you can see some nails there, and they are normally used to ward off evil spirits, to heal people, okay, and wherever, let's say a person was healed, they would, knock the nail into the statue, all right, okay, or maybe I give another example. If an African mask, okay, that is commonly displayed in Western museums. Okay, I mean, those masks were originally used as part of a ritual or dance, all right? But then, when it's displayed in a museum, it's divorced from that setting, that context, okay? Again, now the people, the tribal, I don't know whether you can call them artists or craftsmen who made this, did they consider this to be art? Okay, so there's something to consider, right? So by whose definition is it called art? So we have that problem with craft. Okay, I'm going to come to craft later. Okay, do you consider craft to be art? What's the distinction between art and craft then? Okay. I mean, there are many examples. Okay, now this is one. Right. I mean, just think of, like, let's say a piece of Chinese porcelain. Now, I consider that to be craft, but now it's been accepted as fine art, okay? Because, porcelain was functional, okay? People use them, okay? And they were normally made by anonymous, so-called crafts workers, okay? But yet, they have now been accepted as art. But how about, this work? For example, in more sort of primitive societies, okay, or like in the American Indian society, like the Navajos. Okay, this is a blanket, right? Okay, and a very abstract, blanket with geometric shapes. Now, do you consider this to be a work of art? Right. Now, who will consider this to be a work of art? Can I maybe have a show of hands? No, none of you. Okay, good, only one. Okay, so the rest I will assume either you have no opinion, okay, or you consider this to be craft. Am I correct? Okay, right. Okay, I have to say that, normally, items like Navajo blankets, okay, are still considered to be craft or classified as craft because of a few things. Firstly, they use non-artistic materials, okay, right? Secondly, because of their functionality, they are useful. They can be used, unlike, for example, much of fine art, okay, which are non-functional, okay. Their anonymity, okay, they are normally made by people who we don't know by name, okay. And this one, I don't know for the female audience there, okay. They are normally made by women, all right, okay. So, and that is why, crafts were traditionally termed also low art. Okay, so I would say traditionally there's this distinction not only between art and craft, but between high art and low art. So fine art is always considered to be, a kind of high art, okay, versus craft or low art. Okay, so is it fair at all to make this distinction? Okay, we have to ask ourselves. But coming to contemporary times, okay, this distinction, this division between high art and low art is blurred, increasingly blurred, right? Okay, and this is really a reflection of our own changing social values as well. Okay. So increasingly, you see artists using or making works, okay, which involve a lot of craft, okay, or which uses craft materials, okay. Now one can think of course, of the UK artists who like to cross-dress, Grayson Perry. Okay, Grayson Perry, he bit confused, right? He won the Turner Prize, okay, with his porcelain works. Okay, he does porcelain, okay, but the painting on the porcelain was done in a very contemporary way, okay. And Tracy Emin as well, which you've seen, who did the My Bed, right, that work, okay. She deals a lot with embroidery, right, okay. And embroidery, as you know, was largely women's work, okay, and which have really been excluded from the category of art previously, okay. And increasingly in Southeast Asia, right, we see artists, okay, also using craft materials, right, particularly in countries like Indonesia. In Vietnam, for example, artists are still using lacquer, okay, even in contemporary works, right. Okay, so you have this Indonesian artist, okay, quite well known, Ninditio Adiponomo, right. His wife is, those who have been to Yogyakarta would know, right? His wife runs the famous Cimeti art house, okay, in Yogyakarta, right? His wife is Dutch, okay, Mella, right? And anyway, he named this work Hiding Rituals and the Mass Production, okay? And his work often deals with the position of women in Javanese society. He's Javanese. Okay, and in Javanese society, women used to wear this hairpiece called the konde, K-O-N-D-E. Right, the konde is like an extension of the hair. It's made of real hair as well, right? So what the woman would do is that they would save the hair to build up a volume, and then they would form the konde. Okay, so for this particular work, he uses rattan, okay, to make the form of a konde. Right, but to him, wearing the konde is, of course, to the woman, right, in Javanese society, it symbolizes femininity, sensuality, allure, okay? But to Adiponomo, right, the konde is very burdensome, okay, meaning is, in a sense, it trapped women in that sort of customs, right, those tradition and customs okay, which he felt probably are not relevant anymore in today's society, right? And some of these customs can be very constraining to women, okay? And for this work, he actually attached his own hair, okay? He actually put them in plastic bags, and they are actually attached to the frayed rattan. So you can see the frayed rattan here, right? And some plastic bags containing the artist's own hair. Okay. Okay, now the question is, what enables us to group together as art? Okay, these three different paintings. Okay, one is of course the one I showed you at Lesco. Okay, the famous work, I mean, signature work of Piet Mondrian, right? And then Michelangelo's, right, the creation of Adam, okay, in the Sistine Chapel. Okay. Now I won't go through all these, of course. I mean, you can go back and maybe ponder over these points. It can be all of this or some of this that makes something art. Okay, right? Again, originality is subjective, as I said. Duchamp was the first one to question, originality with his fountain. Okay, artifactuality as well. Now, let's say you pick a piece of driftwood, right, from a beach. Okay, and can you just display that driftwood and then consider it to be art? Okay, so artifactuality means that that piece of driftwood that you picked up have to be transformed, modified somehow, okay, through human agency. Okay, and I think for artifactuality that discounts what animals do as art as well. Okay, but again, as I said, we have no definite answer, right? But I think the one point that is cited often about, when you say, you call that the piece of brick art, right? And they will cite it, right? They will cite this philosopher called George Dickey, right? Who came up with his own theory called the institutional context. That's point number 3. Institutional context of art. Okay, where something becomes an artwork if it is sanctioned by certain people, or if it's displayed in a certain context. So that's why I brought this example. I mean, you can confidently say that this works that you see here is art because it's in an art gallery, or if it's at a museum. Okay, that's what makes it art, right? And at the museum, of course, you also have, it must have gone through the curators who chose it, and by choosing that work, sanction it as art. Okay, now, it's a fairly inclusive theory, okay, but there are problems as well. Okay, but I won't have time to go through, through those problems of that particular theory, right? The institutional context, right? Okay, and you have others as well. I mean, if you look at the 6th point, it must be similar to other artworks. Okay, now this is interesting as well because it's called the theory of family resemblance. Okay, it may not look exactly like the other work, okay, but perceptually, it resembles that work. Okay, it belongs to what they call the same family. Okay. It must have a certain theory behind it. So a lot of artists today, what they do is that they employ top-notch curators, writers to write for them, okay, to write about their works. Okay, so as long as there's a theory behind it, okay, right, people will accept it as art, right? How about Damien Hirst's work, The Stuffed Shark? Okay, right. The physical impossibility of death in the mind of someone living, right? That's a title. Okay, right? It's now worth. I mean, Steve Cohen was reported to have bought it for $12 million, right? Dollars. Right? Okay. I don't know. Right? When Andy Warhol, displayed his Brillo boxes, okay, that looks identical as the one in the supermarket, right? Okay. So what makes that art? And Arthur Danto, the philosopher from Columbia University, wrote about it, and he And he said that there must be a certain theory behind it that makes it art, right? So loosely defined, or art is firstly the product of creative human activity. Okay, materials must be shaped, okay, to convey an idea, an emotion, or visually interesting form. Okay, I don't know whether this is a satisfactory definition, but maybe for the purposes of this talk, that will do, right? Okay, at least for now. Okay, but I have to say that this, the definition of art is elusive and constantly changing. Okay, I'll just go on to my next, the next part of my talk, which is why do we make art? Okay. However loosely defined art is, okay, but we'll try to, look at how art, okay, is used, right? Okay, this is Picasso. He says that the purpose of art is washing the dust of daily life off our souls. Right? I suppose this is a very philosophical way of looking at art. Okay? But of course, there are many practical functions of art. Right? Okay, of course, the list that I'm giving you today is not exhaustive. Okay, of course, there are many more, okay, that you can think about. Okay? Of course, some philosophers have argued that art serves no function. It exists for its own sake. Okay? Now you must have come across this phrase called art for art's sake. Okay? Art for art's sake. Right? Okay, and that phrase was particularly apt to describe abstract art. Okay? Right? Where art was not done to serve any function or to convey any moral story. Okay? But come to think of it, I mean, even abstract art can be used in a decorative way. You hang it on the wall of your house, so it serves a function. Okay, so there's really no such thing as art for art's sake, right? Okay, let me go on to the next point. Okay, so people make art for many reasons, okay, which accounts for its very multifaceted and complex nature. Okay. Sometimes, a single work of art can have more than one purpose. Okay, it could have multiple purposes. It could be, for example, political, social, religious, all at the same time, right? Okay, for example, some Renaissance work, okay, may seem very religious to you, right? Let's say, a painting of, there's one painting by, I think, was it Botticelli, right? Okay, showing the story of the birth of Jesus and the visit of the three magi, right? It's a very religious painting. Until you see who the three magi are, right? They are actually members of the Medici family. Okay, they inserted themselves in the painting. Okay, and it's all to give them political mileage, right? Okay, so art has, as I said, sometimes multiple purposes. Okay. Now the first one, to create beauty. I think this is a kind of a very common, okay, function of art, right? And artists, since the time of the Greeks, okay, they have always aimed to improve upon nature. Okay, they wanted to perfect nature. Okay, and that is known by the term called idealize. Okay, right? So the Greeks created what you call idealized sculptures. Right? So notice Greek sculptures, they look almost perfect. Right? Okay? How about this work? Okay. Have you all seen this work before? Okay, maybe even in person. Okay, by the French neoclassical artist Ingres. Okay, Jean-Dominique Ingres. Right? And this work is entitled Odalisque. Now, Odalisque actually is a term that refers to the concubines, okay, in the Turkish Sultan's harem. Okay, right? And in Western term, I suppose in Western art term, this is just called a reclining nude. Okay, right, in a very languid pose, right, okay. But when people saw this work by arguably the greatest draftsman who ever lived, they thought, hey, there's something wrong with this. Can you see? It's too elongated, okay? Yes. It doesn't conform to anatomical realism, okay? And some commented that there are no bones, no muscles, right? And some say that there are 2 or 3 vertebrae too many, right? Okay, right? But, you know, how could a master like Ang make such a mistake, right? Okay, he couldn't possibly. I mean, look at the sumptuous background. Look at the peacock fan and, you know, the curtains. I mean, you know, very few people could paint like this. So how could he make a mistake with a figure? Okay, of course it's not, right? He uses a long line to convey the curvature and sensuality, right? He wanted to make the figure more sensual and elegant, okay, by elongating it. Okay, so what Ang was doing was that he was trying to idealize the figure, to conform to a certain notion of beauty, right? To decorate, okay, right? This is also perhaps one of the oldest functions of art, even today, the aesthetic urge, right? That's why you all collect art as well, right? Okay, so that you can wake up every morning, right? Okay, look at it, be happy. Okay, and increasingly, even in Singapore, you know, we see the government realizing the value of art, okay, right, in order to create a kind of a more livable environment, okay. The aesthetic urge, and one example, okay. Now this is taken, what do you call a decorative motif, okay, from the Alhambra Palace. Okay, I'm sure some of you have been there in Spain, okay, and probably the Alhambra Palace is probably the most sumptuously decorated Islamic palace, okay, or any, for that matter, any palace, okay, and you know, the Muslims, you know, the Islamic artists, right? You notice that when you look at Islamic art, okay, you notice that it is highly decorative in its character, okay, highly ornamented, okay. Ornamentation, you know, play a big role in Islamic art, okay. That's because in Islam, okay, you're actually forbidden to depict the human figure, okay, because you are seen in competition with God, right? Okay, so you are forbidden to depict the human. So that is why they chose the other way. Okay, right? They resorted to making art which are more highly decorative, right, in character. Okay, and this is a perfect example of Islamic art, right? Where, you know, Islamic artists normally when they create patterns like this, okay, they would create in such a way that the pattern seemed to be infinite. Okay, right? In its repetition and its multiplicity. Okay, and is that a bell for me? Oh, sorry. Okay, probably not. Still a bit early. I thought there's bell. Got to stop. Maybe it's good to remind me later. Okay, and you know, for in Islam, you know, for Islamic artists, Islamic art, you know, express the logic and order inherent in the Islamic vision of the universe. Okay, and you know, the Muslims, right, they were very skilled mathematicians. Okay, so it takes a lot of knowledge of mathematics as well to create such works. All right, and that this work also sort of underlies the kind of the logic, right? Okay, inherent in the universe, or when God created the universe, right? Okay, to immortalize. Okay, I mean, this is also one of the oldest functions of art. Okay, I mean, you know, you have seen it with the Egyptians who mummify their dead, right? And this is nothing new. I mean, this can be traced back to the history of portraiture, right? Okay, to a history of portraiture, and you know, for example, in Roman houses, it's not uncommon for them to have paintings of themselves done on the walls of their houses. Okay, okay. So it's meant to immortalize. It's meant to be commemorative. Okay, and it's also meant to create works that would remain in public consciousness. Don't know how many of you have come across this work. Okay, okay. There are two versions. The original one is a photograph by Alberto Corda. Okay, and now Alberto Corda, you know, of course, he's a firm follower of Cuba as well. Okay, of communism in Cuba under Fidel Castro. Right, and Corda in one, I think he was at an event that was a memorial. Okay, what happened was a ship blew up with some weapons and then people got killed. So Che Guevara, who was a close associate of Fidel Castro, he was a rebel, a revolutionary. Okay, so he fought for the Cuban government. Okay, and Corda happened to take a shot of Che Guevara. Okay, but of course he did some editing, right? Okay, originally the shot comprised of a palm tree behind and a few other things. Okay, but he cropped it in such a way that now the photo itself has become like immortalized. Right, Che Guevara has become immortalized. Okay, timeless, ageless. Right, okay, and later on, of course, this American artist called Jim Fitzpatrick, right, decided to take it further by making a print of Che Guevara. And I think it's with Fitzpatrick's work that really Che Guevara's image has become, you know, really immortalized in history. All right, and that's what Fitzpatrick wrote as well. Okay, he says he saw Che Guevara as a hero. Okay, and he wanted to commemorate him. Okay, because normally heroes are forgotten. Okay, so he wanted to commemorate Che Guevara, and Che Guevara, the image has become, I think, a symbol of many things. You know, especially anti-establishment, right? Okay, he was, I think, popular in the psychedelic 60s and all that. You know, and today you still see people, you know, wearing T-shirts with his image, right? Okay, so there's something about the image that, you know, sort of, you know, attracts people. Okay, to record historical events, right, and this is probably one of art's earliest purposes. Okay, okay, this is Trajan's column in Rome. Okay, and we're not sure as to the purpose of this column. Okay, but it's widely accepted that this column was a kind of a commemorative column. Okay, it was built to celebrate Trajan's victory over the Dracians. The Dracians were this group of people that the Romans conquered, right? And it stands about 98 feet in height. Okay, originally there used to be a figure of the Emperor Trajan on top. Okay, but when the Christians took over Rome, they replaced his statue with a statue of Saint Peter. Okay, so it stands on top now. Okay, and there's a continuous sculptural frieze that goes around. Okay, and you can see it's actually what they call a relief sculpture. It's not a three-dimensional sculpture; it's a relief sculpture, and it comprises altogether about 2,500 figures, right, showing the Roman army on the march and at war, okay, against their enemies. Okay, but you see, it's not entirely historical as well, because if you look at the bottom, there's a giant figure there, right? So the Romans also injected some myth in it. That's actually Neptune, okay, the god of the sea, right? So obviously Neptune has come to the rescue of the Roman army, right? Okay, but I would say that such a work, okay, was, you know, I mean, they also sort of, historians can learn a lot as well, okay, from such works, even from works of art like this, okay, about the Roman army, about their equipment, their armor, etc. Okay. And to express religious value, okay, right. And again, I think this is probably the oldest function of art. Okay, because if you look at the caves, the paintings at Lascaux, okay, one of the theories is that the paintings that you see at Lascaux were meant to accompany some sort of a ritual. Okay, we don't know exactly what those rituals are. Okay, but they were probably religious in nature. All right. So the religious function, and I have one splendid example here. Arguably, okay, arguably what should I say, the greatest, the most beautiful Buddha image ever created, right? And this example is from the Gupta dynasty, okay, the 5th century AD. Okay, and the Buddha image started to appear already. I mean, the sort of the dates vary. Okay, some say it's about 2nd century BC to about 2nd century AD, right? But this image conformed in terms of its iconography, meaning the pose and the hand gestures, all that. In terms of its iconography, it conforms to the standard Buddha image. Okay, but in terms of style, as I said, right, it has a quality that is rather unsurpassed. Right? I mean, we'll look first at the iconography. I mean, a Buddha image will normally be shown with what you call a ushnisha, a cranial bump, okay, representing super spiritual wisdom, okay? And then you will have snail curls on it, and then elongated earlobes. Anyone knows why the Buddha image has elongated earlobes? Huh? Sorry?
Long life.
Long life, okay. Maybe. Oh, so you can hear better. Okay, maybe. Okay, now is to allude to the fact that the Buddha was once a prince. Okay, he was a prince, and he used to wear heavy jewelry. Okay, so that's the reason. Yes, right. So you see the Buddha with elongated earlobes. Okay, and normally our Buddha images will have leg gestures, leg postures. The standard one will be the meditative, the lotus pose like this. Okay, right, where the two legs are crossed, but different hand gestures. Okay, now this one makes the hand gesture of teaching, the gesture of teaching. Okay, it's called the Dhammachakra mudra. Mudras are hand gestures, right? Okay, and he's actually making the gesture of turning the wheel of the law. Okay, it's to symbolize his first sermon at Sanath, right, the deer park, where he first preached. Okay? Now, talking about the quality, I mean, as I say, it's unsurpassed. I mean, if you look at the eyes, the downcast eyes, okay, if you look at the diaphanous drapery, right, that clings to the body, if you look at the pose, okay, now all of this give the image, okay, the sculpture a kind of otherworldly, transcendent quality. Okay, as I said, unmatched by, other Buddha images. Right? It has that kind of transcendent quality, okay, that you don't often see in other Buddha images. Right? And a very decorative, what you call aureole behind. Okay, which serve as a kind of a halo as well. Okay. Now to teach, I have a few more to go, so just, sorry, all right? Okay. So art also helps us to understand the world better. Okay. Now I'm sure you have seen stained glass, right? Stained glass windows. Okay. For example, if you visited the the great Gothic churches in France, right? Even in Singapore, you can see stained glass windows. Okay. But do you know what was the original purpose of stained glass windows? Okay, many of us think that it's merely decorative, right? I mean, it creates a certain ambience, right? At certain times of the day when the light filters through the window, okay? And you think it's to create a kind of spiritual environment. Now that's true partly, okay? But if you see what's sort of each of the stained glass have figures, okay? They tell stories from the Bible, okay? And the original purpose of a stained glass, okay, at least, I mean, the stained glass itself was originated in one of the cathedrals, I mean, in the Gothic period, right, in France. Okay, I mean, the original purpose was really meant to teach the masses, okay, the majority of whom were illiterate. Okay, so the stained glass windows serve as a kind of visual Bible, okay, for many of the people. Now, this is a magnificent example. Okay, it's called the Blue Virgin window. okay, is considered to be, you know, the best stained glass example, right, in the world, right? And is found in Chartres. Chartres is one of the better known cathedrals in France. Okay, so you have Notre Dame and then you have Chartres. Okay, and Chartres has the best preserved stained glass windows, okay, of all the Gothic cathedrals in France. Okay, so this is a very fine example, showing the Virgin Mary holding the Christ child, okay, and the dove, right? You can see the dove above the Virgin Mary, symbolizing the Holy Spirit, right? Okay, and the colors are normally blue. Okay, blue is again a symbolic color for the Virgin Mary, right? So it's dominated by blues and reds, okay, for this stained glass. Okay, to stimulate the intellect, I mean, it's closely aligned to teaching, okay, right? But here is a bit more profound. So art has the capacity to stimulate, okay, our intellect, right? Okay, and it's a bit more. It has a more profound function then, right? To make us think more profoundly, right? Okay, I did mention earlier in the talk about this category of art called conceptual art, okay, where the idea, the concept, okay, takes primacy over the aesthetic quality of the artwork or even the execution, okay. So there are some, okay, Duchamp's work, The Fountain, that's an example of conceptual art, okay, for example, right? And many conceptual artists, even today, right, they use text, okay, as a major part of their work. Okay, and one such artist is Jenny Holzer. Okay, now you must have come across Jenny Holzer's work because she was here for the, I think, 2008 or the 2006 Singapore Biennale. Okay, I can't remember. Okay, where one of her works used what you call xenon projection. Okay, and it projects words onto buildings. I don't know whether you recall that. Okay, and it was projected onto City Hall and the Supreme Court, right? Okay, but here she, Holzer created such works, okay, which she calls truism, right? Now, and truisms are like what you call aphorisms. Okay, aphorisms are very laconic, very short expressions or phrases that express a general truth, a universal truth. Okay, so she will create this. She created hundreds of them. Okay, I think most of them were actually an invention, although some sounds very familiar. Okay, for example, she will have truism that says, "Abuse of power comes as no surprise." Okay, right? Okay, so for this work, it's called right, sever kindness because cruelty is always possible. I don't know why I have the word survival there. Oh, it's part of the title, right? Okay, but for the actual word, it's just sever kindness because cruelty is always possible later. Okay, and she actually, and her truisms can appear anywhere. Okay, it can appear on billboards. Okay, on a bench like this, right? It's a marble bench. Okay, I think it's quite appropriate. I mean, you know, it gives the word some sort of monumentality because, you know, it's carved from marble, right? But her works can appear in unexpected places, okay? And some of them are very vague, very contradictory, okay, and not so straightforward, right? Okay, I have three more, I believe, all right? Three more sort of, function. And another function is to record personal experiences, right? I suppose for the defenders, well, you know, contemporary art is quite controversial, right? Okay, yes, it's both his detractors and his defenders. Okay, so his defenders, you know, would always defend contemporary art by saying, well, art is self-expression, right? So the artist can express anything he wants. Okay, right? So I suppose that's quite true to some extent. Okay, So art is also meant to convey the personal experiences of an artist. Okay, this is a work by Edvard Munch. I'm of course, anyone not seen this work? Okay, no, right? Okay, but do you know that it's now the most expensive work ever sold at an auction, 119 million US, okay? But ever sold at an auction, not privately, right? Privately, of course, Cézanne's card players still hold the record. Okay, but that's over $200 million, okay? Right? Okay, but, you know, and this work is, in a sense, autobiographical, okay? It's meant to, it seemed that Munch kept a diary, a journal, okay, and he recorded that he was walking with two friends. You can see the two friends there, okay, walking away from him. Okay, he was walking with two friends along a bridge, and then suddenly, you know, I have to tell you this, that Munch suffered from some mental illness, okay, probably depression or schizophrenia. Right? He's not mentally right as well. Okay, I think that's because, you know, I mean, you can read his own personal history, right? Okay, and he was walking along a bridge, okay, and then he suddenly heard a piercing scream, right? What he calls an infinite scream, okay, and that's why he's, you know, he's sort of covering his ears, okay, because the scream is probably too piercing, okay, to bear, right? I don't know whether it's because of his imagination. Okay, and he also saw the clouds turning bloody red. Okay, so, you know, so that's, you know, that's how the cloud will probably appear to him, perhaps, right? Okay. But Munch, being an expressionist painter, you know, this work is, you know, I mean, we can have many interpretations of this work. Some say that, you know, it talks about existentialism, existentialist angst, you know, right? I mean, you can, that's one way you can see it. Right? But I think in terms of the painting itself, I mean, you know, he uses, you can see, for example, the undulating lines, the violent colors, the very sharp, you know, the perspective of the bridge. All of this adds anxiety to the painting, right? Makes us anxious as well when we look at it, okay? Right? And if you look at Munch's, I mean, I don't know whether that's Munch or not, right? Okay? Right? But by all, you know, if you were to read what he has written, maybe, okay, that refers to him, right? But if you look at the head itself, it's androgynous. Okay, it's neither male nor female. Okay, it looks kind of skeletal as well. Okay, like a skeleton. Okay, to reflect the social and cultural context. Okay, and often artists record the activities of their times and places. Okay, and sometimes artists also use their works as a critique of their times and places. And one can see in this work by Andy Warhol. Okay, right. Now Andy Warhol, I must give it to him. I mean, he's a clever artist, right? Okay, he knew how to make works that people recognize. Okay, I think that's what made him successful. Because like people like Jackson Pollock, you know Jackson Pollock, right? Okay, who created those abstract expressionist works, you know, Rothko and all that. You know, they were creating works that nobody understood. Okay, so pop art arose in response to the elitism of abstract expressionism. Okay, so Warhol, Lichtenstein, people like that created works that the common people understood. I mean, they recognize this, they eat it every day. Okay. Warhol himself claimed that he ate this for 20 years in a row, okay? Right, ate it or drank it, whatever, right? Campbell soup, okay? And you know, Warhol, most of his works were done using a silk screen printing, but occasionally he would also paint them, okay? Now, and often he would use the strategy of repetition in his work. Do you notice that? Okay, for many of his series, like Marilyn Monroe, okay, they had a Warhol show, right? Not too long ago at the Art Science. Okay, I managed to see that. It's quite a good show, right? Now, question is he celebrating consumerism? Okay, or is he criticizing it? Okay, so that's one thing that's not so clear here, right? Maybe both. Okay, maybe both. Okay, so by repeating his images, okay, he could be referring to the kind of the mass production you see in factories, right? But at the same time, it could also be a criticism against what they call rampant consumerism, excessive consumerism, okay? Against the kinds of things that, you know, advertisements do. They bombard us with images, okay? So that perhaps is not a good thing. And perhaps, you know, there might be something a bit more implicit in his work, okay, that we don't know, right? Okay, so it could be more than just a celebration of pop culture, okay? Right, it could be more than a celebration of that. Okay, to propagate political values, okay, and again, this is one of the oldest functions of art, okay, and you know, the Egyptians have done that. You know, they have constructed monumental temples, okay, all of which serve to glorify the pharaohs, okay, but it was really the Romans who were masters at doing that, okay, to use art for propaganda purposes, okay. I mean, that's something that still politicians recognize today, right? Okay, right? The political value of art, right? And this recognition of the political, you know, value of art, right, was best exploited in socialist countries, right? And even in Nazi Germany, okay, in Nazi Germany, and later on in socialist countries like Stalin's Russia. Okay, and today I think in Korea as well, right? North Korea. And of course in communist China where you see Mao's image, you know? Okay, almost ubiquitous, right? Appearing everywhere. Okay, and talking about Mao, okay, so during the Cultural Revolution, which was one of the most you know, saddest moment in history, okay, where Mao literally you know, went on a massacre, okay, of intellectuals and, you know, and art. Okay, and these posters were used to do that, right? To you know, to stir up people, okay, for the Cultural Revolution, right? Okay, so the left one says, "Hail to the successful opening of the Hangzhou Red Guards Representative Conference of Middle Schools." Of course, the Red Guards were feared, right? They just didn't care, you know, right? I mean, if they have to kill you, they'll kill you. Okay, and the red book as well that, you know, this soldier. Okay, the Red Guard is carrying, right? And the other one is called Smash, the Culture Ministry. Of course, you know, I mean, thousands of works were probably lost to the Cultural Revolution, artworks, okay? Okay, so these political posters were very, were produced in large volumes during the time of Mao, okay? Okay, so just to have a quote by Judith Knight, right? I see we have some audience outside as well. All right, can't ask them to come in. Okay. Wonder if they can hear me talking. Okay, so he said, what the arts can do is remind us that it's possible to save the world. Art can shock us, spur us into action. Okay. Now, I suppose artists sometimes have this belief that they can change the world. Okay. But that's a very utopian belief, because I think by themselves, they cannot change the world, or through their art. But what they can do is true, right? Their art can inspire us as well to change the world, right? And that's what some Thai artists believe. A Thai artist, like, I think this is my last slide, like, you know, so this is art being used to protest injustice and raise social consciousness. And I think that's especially pertinent in Southeast Asian contemporary art, right? Okay. I think somehow this region tend to be a bit more turbulent than other regions, you know. I mean, look at Thailand itself. How many prime ministers have they changed, you know? And then, what do you call it? The yellow hat, is it? Red shirt, sorry. Thinking of red shirt, yellow shirts, right? Okay, so all those political violence, okay, are actually fodder for artists, right? Okay, to protest, okay, against all this political corruption and violence. And one of these artists, of course, is Vasant Sitike. Okay, have you met him in person? I mean, he's a real eccentric. Okay, right? I mean, he believes that, you know, in using his art. Okay, I mean, you can call him an activist as well. Okay, he's an artist, he's an activist. Okay, and he believes in using his art, okay, to protest against social and political injustices. Okay, he has a whole series of paintings. Well, that's quite pornographic, his paintings. I'm talking about triple X, okay, right, showing what was that? Prime Minister Thaksin, okay, right, whole series of paintings showing Thaksin in certain sexual position and all that, but it's really a critique against the Thaksin regime, right, all the corruption, etc., right, okay. His works are very graphic, I have to warn you, right, okay, it's very graphic, very confrontational, okay, it doesn't hide anything, okay. So he says here, you know, I use my art as my weapon, okay, right, to change what I disagree with, right, okay. And he's very much against things like capitalism, especially, you know, how capitalism is used to exploit the poor, right? Okay, so now let's look at this work. You must have seen this work because I think it was last displayed during the SM, precisely, Singapore Museum. Okay, as part of the exhibition called Negotiating, right? Home Histories of the Nation, right? I mean, that's curated by Yola Lenzi, who is a guest curator. She also teaches in the master's program, right? So she's a specialist in Southeast Asian art, and she, in that exhibition, SM, which she curated, this work was shown, right? And Vasan Sitiket, right? This is called Committing Suicide Culture. I mean, his titles are very interesting, okay? The only way Thai farmers escape death. He's very literal, huh? He doesn't play around with words as well, right? Okay, and here you have, I suppose you can call them, you know, made of wood, some sort of figures, right, or sculptures, okay? And you can see that, you know, these are, you know, she's showing a suicide scene. And these are actually farmers, okay? Farmers who committed suicide, particularly during the 1995, that was the Asian financial crisis, around that period, okay? Where a lot of farmers, because of bad debt, okay, took their own lives, okay? And also because of, I suppose, exploitation, okay? Because of capitalist exploitation. And because of things like urban migration and also technological improvement, all that affected the livelihood of the farmers, okay? So you see here a very graphic picture, okay? Below are what you call rice husk, okay? Now rice husk allude, of course, to rice, I mean, which is a staple diet, okay, of many people in Southeast Asia. But rice husk also alludes to the fact that, you know, alludes to the poverty as well, okay, the bankruptcy, okay, of these Thai farmers. Right? I think I've come to the end of my talk, okay, but I'm open to we have some time, right? Do we have 10 minutes or so, you know, I mean, it's until 9 o'clock. I mean, we can, you know, certainly have some dialogue here. I mean, are there any questions, okay, that you have?
So I'm from Russia, and I have a question. If you consider as an art the performance of Pussy Riots in the cathedral, because now it's a lot of arguments, a lot of discussions all over the world.
Right.
So some people, like Paul McCartney, Madonna, they really try to help them. Yes, and the people inside of Russia, they're really against this act. It's like against the religions, against the politics, against everything.
Right.
So, and the Russia divided also.
Right.
So I'm just asking, how do you consider this kind of art, stupidness, protest, or what is?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to say as well in my lecture, right? You know, I mean, that is a performance work, is it? Or installation which you did?
No, they came to the cathedral trying to pray against the Putin.
Oh, yes, that's right. The what were those the girls called? I forgot.
Pussy Riot.
Oh, yeah, Pussy Riot, correct. Okay, you know the Pussy Riot? Okay, this Russian, they are musicians, are they? Or
Kind of.
yeah, kind of, right.
Nobody knew them before.
Right, okay. Okay, sometimes there's a fine line between what is art. You know, again, you know, we have to be careful about calling everything art, right? Okay, and sometimes the name of art can itself be abused, you know, by people. who want to, see certain changes being made, Like the Samantha Low case, again, I think there's still quite a bit of debate over that, right? Whether it's vandalism or whether it's art, okay? Right, and it's how you define it, And of course, you say what the Pussy Riots they did was art, then of course it will help to mitigate, their actions, all right? Okay, but I don't know. I think different people will see it differently, right? Again, how the government sees it and how, her supporters sees it, right? It's quite different, Mm. Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah. It's better with a mic.
I just want to ask a very simple question, exactly opposite from that. So, what would you not consider art, Jeffrey?
Wow, that's a philosophical question.
Not to put you in the spot.
I know. Yeah, it's difficult. I suppose. Okay, context is important, I suppose. Right? Okay. Well, it got me. I'm a bit stumbled.
No, I'm okay with no.
Yeah.
I'm okay with
Yeah.
you saying no, there's nothing. That's an answer.
Right. Yeah. I have to say it's how you define art as well. Right? Okay? Right, it's how you define art. Okay? And if you were to go, for example, to the villages of India, okay, where you see communities of craftsmen, okay, making religious images. Okay? Now, sometimes it's hard for me to accept that as art. Okay? But again, as I said, it depends on how you define art. Right? Okay? And sometimes the definition can be defined by people who has some, I would say, vested interests in art as well. So it all depends, I suppose, right? But I suppose context counts as well, right? So I suppose that's why you have people like curators, okay? I suppose, and people like that. Right, who try on behalf, I suppose, of the public to help to define what art is about. Okay, although I would say that sometimes the public remain unconvinced. Okay, because as I mentioned, art is a very subjective thing as well. Right?
What's your definition?
Wow, what's my definition of art? Okay, I think earlier there's a slide there. I tried to come up with a compromise, I suppose, a kind of middle ground. I mean, art, I suppose, okay, why, people consider things which are only made by humans to be art is again because of the, animals don't have that kind of, I would say that intellectual, conceptual faculty like humans. Okay, I mean, we can argue about that, I mean, if you look at dolphins and all, they are quite highly intelligent animals, right? So I would say that first and foremost, I suppose, it has to be created by human agency to me, right? Okay. There must be an idea or concept, okay, behind it, okay. No, I have to admit that although I'm giving this talk, I'm still struggling to come to terms, okay, with much of contemporary art, okay, and in particular the genre of video art. Have you all seen video work before? Okay, you go to a museum, there's this, normally it takes place in an enclosed space, there's a video playing, right? Okay, and you see maybe one figure doing something that you don't quite understand, right? And you see it for like 1 minute. It's supposed to be a 10-minute video, okay, and you come out scratching your head, right? Okay, and it's not easy, right? I'm still, I must admit, I can accept performance art. Performance art is when an artist, right, use his own body as an artwork, right, and he will sort of perform in front of a live audience, okay. I mean, I still get it sometimes, but video art is, I think video art is a bit more on the intellectual plane. Sometimes you have to see it in its entirety before you can actually appreciate it, right? Okay, so I must admit that I suppose for me, personally, I think art it must be something that's created also by skill and technique also play a big role. Because I've seen conceptual art, okay, that is just based on idea, and sometimes, I see some of my students getting away with it, a lot of ideas, okay, and because some of them don't have the skills, I mean, that's a fact. It's quite true, actually, right? And so, they have all these ideas, but, it's in terms of technique, it was badly done, you see, right? Okay, so I suppose there must be some skill involved as well, right? Okay, in addition to the concept, right? Okay, I mean, one can argue also that, how do you regard a landscape painter who just goes out and paints what he sees, Where's the concept there? Okay, so I suppose you can have artists who argue, that way as well, right? Okay. Hope I answered you. It's not an easy question to answer, right? Okay.
Any more questions?
Rather quiet audience.
Okay, but Jeffrey will be here for the next half an hour to 1 hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, please feel free to approach him. And
Yes.
we want to thank Mr. Jeffrey for such an
Thank you.
awesome class. I enjoyed myself a lot.
Oh, thanks. Yes. Okay.
Thank all of you for coming too. So we have one of each session for the next 3 months. So please do come by. We'll be looking forward to seeing all of you. And also, Jeffrey, as you mentioned at the beginning of the class, if any one of you missed, is that we're going to have, LaSalle is going to have some courses, MA program, and also monthly
Yeah,
programs.
short courses.
Short courses. So
short courses.
please visit their website and have a look at it. And
Yeah, I'm actually offering 2 courses next, just to advertise in advance, between August and November. I think one will probably starting August, then the other one in October. Okay, and it's an overview of art history. Okay, but it's a 7-week course. Each course is 7 weeks. Okay, so I just ended a history of portraiture course yesterday. Okay, 7-week course as well. So all these courses they are offered, right? Okay, and you can look out for it on the website. Okay. Okay, so hope to see you. I'm going for my second round. Okay, because the food is good.
more food.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody.
I think it was a very informative talk. It's a very good introduction to what art is. The lecturer started with, teasing our understanding of what's art by giving us a few examples of really interesting things like my bed, and the other one was some paintings, and asking us whether this is art. And then he went on to uncover many different definitions of art, which will all seem to revolve around different contexts, different, different contexts, I guess. Then later on went on to ask what's the purpose of art. So I learned quite a little bit from this lecture, and it's really useful. It put into perspective some of the things that I have been fumbling on my own, like when I look at the Andy Warhol's exhibition at Art Science Museum. A lot of things come into perspective now after listening to the lecture. I think the most interesting thing that I heard was about the painting by Munch, the Scream. I've always wondered why it has become the highest bidding auction piece, and I didn't really know the provenance of, or rather the background behind why the painting was painted the way it was. So it gives me some historical perspective to it, and I'm particularly interested in that piece.
I really like it. I enjoyed the time spent here, especially the lecture was really interesting. The presentation and the lecture by itself was really wow. I was amazed and surprised. Enjoyed.
Yeah, I think it was a good brainstorming to detach from the usual days. Obviously, yes, it was very interesting to listen to the speech.
The same question always arises in the head when we go to the museums. Is it art? Is it really art? Why they call this art? And today we just, I think, goes a bit deeper into this question, even for us, and maybe it's a bit clearer and a bit closer to the reply to this question. And I liked also like well-known arts, pictures, paintings today were described from different sides, from the different view angle which I didn't know before. That's why I really like, for example, screen, yes, the painting, and the beginning few questions like, is it art? And few works were presented, it was like, is it horse? Is it art? Yeah, it was interesting.
The thing that mostly I enjoyed is that no any answer has been really given. There were a lot of questions and the opportunity to think by ourselves about what we think that it is art.
Yeah, it was great. I thought Jeffrey is a real piece of art.
He was a good real piece of art.
He was a good piece of art.
It was good. It was very interesting. I think for me, the idea of having an art lecture in an art gallery, especially one like O2 Art, which has a really good, collection of artwork, it's fantastic. Yeah.
For me, the big question that remains is what is not art?
What is not art?
Yeah.
I think for me, the interesting part is just sort of, being surrounded by pieces of art and having that question of what is art, right? So as you are thinking about it and contemplating it, listening to Jeffrey, and you look around you and you think about all the concepts and ideas behind all the pieces, yeah.
Frankly, I was expecting something very simple and a bit boring. But when I came, I was very pleasantly surprised. In fact, I enjoyed it very much because I find it very informative and not too high and too arty-farty for my liking. I like the fact that he makes it very relatable in a very simple layman terms. And it's very interesting in the sense that he brings in new things about conceptual art and also thought-provoking things about whether video art is really considered art, and he left it open-ended for us to decide whether what is art and what is not art. What I like most is also a lot of examples. I mean, a lot of things that we've come across, and he did point out certain things that some art, we should feel that you've never been too observant, but he actually pointed out some things that which are actually very interesting, and yet things that can make you realize that art can represent many things, what is used for and what it can represent, and whether it's not a matter of just being subjective, but what does art really do, the purpose and what is art.